So a really quick aside before we get this started, the other day I covered Batman Arkham Legacy and the rumors around that. And while a lot of other YouTubers might have, more inside scoops and sources, they've been at this a lot longer than me, some of which are pointing to the validity of the rumor and other people poking holes in it as far as in the comments and just online in general. I think we need to take all of the Batman Arkham news with some skepticism until we see an official reveal. That said, for the purpose of this video, I wanted to just hypothetically take a look at an Arkham Knight sequel and 5 things I would want to see returning in the Arkham Knight sequel, elements that we've seen in the other games before that I would want to come back. This includes locations, characters, storylines, and gameplay mechanics, actually. So it's a little bit of a mixed video, but I wanted to give my take out there and see what you all thought. Now, the first thing that I'd want to see come back is actually Jason Todd. I'm going to admit to you, I am biased. I am a huge Red Hood fan. He's one of my favorite characters in DC Comics, and I love him. I love how you just have this failed Robin coming back, essentially, as this just incredible character who is sometimes a villain, sometimes an anti-hero. It really depends. And even though I'm in the minority on this, I thought he was done very well in Arkham Knight. My issue with him in Arkham Knight is that he wasn't really built up to throughout the games. There were a few throwaway lines referencing Jason Todd. One I can really think of was in Arkham City with the Joker at the beginning of some challenge maps as Robin. He would say something, and I'm not direct quoting it here, but it was something akin to, "Didn't I kill you already? Oh well," and he was referencing Jason Todd when talking to Tim Drake. So he was mentioned, but he never really mattered before Knight. Knight started to flesh out the character a little more, but we don't really see him quite enough, and then he's just gone. But we know he's not dead at the end of Knight because he comes back and helps save Batman from Scarecrow. Now, I really think Jason Todd's storyline could use some more fleshing out. Apparently that Jason Todd Red Hood DLC actually takes place shortly after the events of Arkham Knight, and there's always arguments about the canonicity of any of these things and when they take place, but with us knowing that Jason Todd becomes the Red Hood right after the Arkham Knight incident, I think that really makes a lot of sense, and he's seen wearing the bat symbol again, so at least in some ways, this character must be on the right track, on at least the anti-hero track at the end of Knight. So I think it would be really great to see his storyline continued, fleshed out a little more, and get to see more of the main man, Jason Todd himself, one of my favorite Batman characters. The next thing I'd like to see is a continuation of the Azrael storyline. Now, this is something that really would have to happen in Arkham Knight's sequel, not Arkham Origins. So that's why this would kind of have to come here. Because in Arkham City, it's pretty much their first time meeting, Azrael and Batman. And then Azrael is sort of built up over the course of 2 games. And in Arkham Knight, it depends on your choices, but you can train Azrael to become a successor and a good guy. Or at the end of that, you can actually do the opposite, where he doesn't become a Batman successor and is really kind of cast out by Batman. So that one depended on character choice. I'm not sure how WB Games Montreal would handle it. But right now, Azrael is sort of the only one it seems like is interested in becoming Batman. I'm going to point this out if I can find it, and it's something I was thinking already, but I definitely want to give a shout out to this person because there was a comment in one of the videos about how Dick Grayson didn't really seem interested in becoming Batman. He was very content with being Nightwing, and there was really no build-up throughout the series to him taking over the cowl. So because of that, I think a battle for the cowl storyline's a little difficult with an Arkham Knight sequel, but at the same time in the comics, Dick Grayson also wasn't really that interested in becoming Batman, and he still ended up becoming Batman. So it's still something that could be done. I think a lot of clever writing would need to go into that angle, and maybe that's how Azrael's storyline could continue, by sort of pitting him a little bit against Dick Grayson. We saw that in the original Nightfall comic a bit, as far as the Bat family not understanding why Batman picked this total outsider, Azrael, to take over the mantle of the Batman instead of picking someone from the Bat family. So you could have that show up and be a point of contention in this game's storyline, I'm not sure. I think it's hard to do if you have the entire Court of Owls in this game. You don't want to bloat the storyline. But I think it would also be equally weird if you just dropped Azrael off the face of the Arkham story. It wouldn't make much sense either. The next thing I'd like to see is the Batmobile. Now, wait. Before you click off the video and start sending me death threats and suspicious packages in the mail that may or may not contain a flowery substance, I would like to point out that the Batmobile is actually one of the cooler things about Batman. The problem everyone, myself included, had with the Batmobile in Knight is it's a tank and it's shoved into absolutely every segment of the game where it shouldn't be. All the way to when you have to go underground and you even have to bring the Batmobile with you. I mean, it's like they just do not want this thing leaving your side. And that's the big problem with the Batmobile in Knight. The Batmobile could be an amazing mechanic if it just wasn't focused on so much, and maybe if they didn't focus so much on the tank or battle mechanics of the actual vehicle itself, but instead went with the travel mechanics of the Batmobile. Now, you have to remember the Batmobile was something shown even back in Asylum, and it's very, very cool. It's a good method of transportation, and it works pretty well in Arkham Knight as far as getting around the city. That was never a problem with the Batmobile. The problem, again, was being shoved into aspects of the storyline that were unnecessary, along with being really pushed in the post-game. I mean, I don't have the exact breakdown, but if you count it out, I would say a lot of those Riddler trophies require the Batmobile in some way to get, and even that felt forced. The next thing I'd want to see is a returning location, and it's returning in some ways, in others it would be new. It depends on what game you're looking at, and that's the Batcave. Now, the Batcave shows up over and over again throughout the series in different ways. There's challenge maps of the Batcave. There is the secret sort of Batcave from Arkham Asylum built under it, which was always one of the coolest parts of the game to get to go in there, even though you really can't do much in there. It's just a set piece. And it was heavily featured in Arkham Origins, with you going back, talking to Alfred, doing training there with challenge maps, switching suits. There is a lot more you can do in Arkham Origins with the Batcave. And whether this is a Knight sequel or an Origins sequel, obviously the Batcave could work in either one. It also helps that WB Games Montreal really did have a lot of practice with the Batcave from their previous outing, so no matter where this takes place, I think they'd be able to fit it into the game and make it work out well. I think you could do a few more things with it. I think maybe you could have the Batcave accessible from the overworld map. So maybe if you could drive the Batmobile, you could drive it right up to the waterfall entrance of the Batcave. I mean, I know there's different types of entrances depending on the interpretation. So maybe you could drive it right up to there, go right in and park, and you could get out and talk to Alfred, or you could get out and do your business. Maybe we could have a mechanic with the Batcave where Batman actually takes clues back to the Batcave for analysis. That one would be hard without making it annoying. So I think it's a good idea. I just think that WB Games Montreal would need to be careful with how they incorporate any of these new mechanics into the Batcave, and I would want to see something new. I don't want to just see the same Batcave from Origins, but at the same time, it's kind of sad that Origins is the only game that really makes the Batcave out to be a big deal, considering how prominently it's featured in pretty much every interpretation of Batman, from the Keaton Batman to the comics Batman to the Affleck Batman. It's everywhere. It's movies, comics, games, everywhere. And we just don't see it much. And I think it is a central piece of the character that really kind of shows who Bruce and Batman are and can help flesh that world out a little more. The final thing that I would want to see, and I could make this list go on for days, but it's just the final out of the 5 that I would want to see, is the most likely to return in my opinion. And Jason Todd could have been lumped into this, but I think he was worth mentioning on his own. This final item is the Bat Family. Now, this is one of the cores of the Arkham Legacy rumor. It's a rumor that's been going around back and forth for, I don't know, actually probably 6 months or a year. As far as the next Batman game featuring the Bat Family in some way, it really gained prominence though now. because of the re-leaks slash re-mention from Sabi over on Twitter, and also it coming back in a lot of the Arkham YouTubers videos. I think that people had forgotten about this, but it's been a thing for a while, and now it's starting to get more leverage and more credibility. Here's what you'd have to do with the Bat family in an Arkham Knight sequel. You would have to do a lot of interesting character writing. And here's why I say that. The Bat family has always mattered. It's always mattered to me. It has not always mattered as much in the terms of scope of the Arkham games. They show up in supplementary materials more, the canonicity of which is often actually debated, which is why I don't bring some of that stuff up that much. But they also really show up a lot more in some of the DLCs for these games. Now, in Arkham Origins, they pretty much don't show up at all. Dick Grayson's Robin is in the multiplayer, which is reportedly after the main game at some point. And they really don't get into his character there. You just can play as him or get annihilated by him if you are a normal thug. There's also Batgirl, and she's built up a little better throughout the series, I think. She might be one of the best built up members of the Bat family, because you see the Killing Joke events in Arkham Knight, even though that's the newest one. There were flashbacks to that. So you see how she ended up in the chair. She's been Oracle since the first game. She appeared in Asylum and City, as far as on the microphone, talking to Batman. And on top of that, she was featured heavily in Knight. She was really drawn upon in terms of emotional impact with Batman and with Commissioner Gordon, and she's humanized a lot more and just fleshed out. I think one of the harder ones to do, though, is going to be Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson is sort of in these games. He's shown pretty much the most in Knight. He is relatable and human, and he does talk to Batman, and you can tell they have a relationship. So what's the problem with Dick Grayson? There really isn't one, except we don't see enough of him. So the problem with any of this writing for the game, with the new Bat family, is that you need to get everyone to care about them beyond just, oh look, Nightwing, I like Nightwing from the comics, or oh look, Robin, I like Robin from the comics. Because these games have focused so heavily on Batman, which, by the way, has been a good thing, there really hasn't been as much built up with the family. Not to mention that there's a lot of people that haven't shown up, like Stephanie Brown, or Cassandra Cain, or Batwoman, so there are members of this family not around. Batwing, he's not around. And it depends if you want to make these characters exist or not, and how much you want to push into this storyline without bloating it. There's always the issue with movies and games as far as including too many characters and being able to do justice by all of them while focusing on one or two central characters in a game. One game that did a pretty fantastic job of being able to build up multiple characters at the same time was something like Grand Theft Auto 5, where you're playing as 3 different characters and there's still a ton of supporting roles. So it's not that this isn't doable. I'm just saying that because we haven't seen enough of these characters throughout the games, it's going to be a little harder to flesh them out, but I'm sure that they could do it. So this was a little bit longer of a video and a little more rambly, and I'm just wondering what you would want to see in an Arkham Knight sequel. Would you want to see any of these elements? Are there more elements as far as gameplay and characters that you would want to see that I didn't mention? Also, do you want an Arkham Knight sequel? I'm genuinely curious. Which would you prefer, an Arkham Knight sequel or an Arkham Origins sequel? Or are you one of the fringe people who believes that actually both might be in development? That maybe they are creating an Arkham Origins sequel that will then lay the groundwork for a final game that takes place after Knight? I am genuinely curious what you think. So if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. I am definitely growing a lot and I appreciate it. I'm trying to push towards 1,000. Once I hit there, I can actually monetize my channel, which will help me a ton as far as being able to put more time into these videos. And eventually, I'm hoping to do this sort of thing as my job and not have to go into my other job all the time, because I miss a lot of news with it. And I really love hanging out with you guys, talking and covering this stuff. So thank you so much. Have a great day. You're awesome.